Why does your circle need to grow smaller as you grow older? Are you loving others so much that you're losing yourself in the process? And what happens when you choose to hold on to your faith, even when others mock it? Stay with this video until the end, because what you're about to hear may just change how you protect your peace and your heart for the rest of your life. As we grow older, something unusual begins to happen. Our hearts start to shift. We begin to crave peace over noise, clarity over chaos, and sincerity over mere blood ties. But there's one truth that most people never dare to say out loud. A truth that many carry in silence for years. Sometimes, the most dangerous people in your later years are the ones you've known the longest. Even your own family. Let me start with the very first kind of person you must avoid as you enter the later chapters of life. The guilt tripper. And I ask you to listen with your heart wide open, because this type of manipulation rarely shows up with harsh words or hostility. It often comes wrapped in something familiar. Something that looks like love, sounds like care, and wears the trusted face of someone close. But make no mistake, guilt, when used as a weapon of control, is poison. Soft, subtle, but deadly. Guilt trippers don't raise their voices. They whisper, they sigh, they use silence like a blade. You say no once, and suddenly you're the ungrateful one, the selfish one, or worse, the one who doesn't care. All because you dared to set a boundary. All because you finally said, I can't do that anymore. Or, I need some time for myself. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your golden years apologizing just for existing. These are the people who will make you feel like you owe them something just because you've grown older, as if your very presence is a burden. It can come in subtle phrases like, well, I guess I'll just figure it out on my own since you're too busy. Or, I took care of you once, and now look at how you treat me. Let me tell you this, and please hold on to it tightly. Your life is not a debt to be paid to anyone. Not your children, not your siblings, not your lifelong friends. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe them your health. And you certainly don't owe them the last drops of your energy just so they can feel powerful, in control, or morally superior. That's not love. That's manipulation disguised in emotional currency. The older you get, the more you realize that time is your most sacred currency. And guilt trippers? They are professional time thieves. They pull you into draining conversations, overwhelming obligations and relationships that slowly make you question your own worth. You may hear things like, if you really loved me, you'd do this. But remember this, love is not measured by how exhausted you are. And remember what I said earlier, love is not proven through exhaustion. Yet sadly, many people live their whole lives believing the opposite. They give up pieces of themselves just to maintain a form of love that's been twisted by manipulation. Because real love is not measured by how much of yourself you abandon. No one proves love by shrinking. True love is proven by living in your truth. But here's what's even more dangerous, and most people don't realize it. Guilt trippers often condition you to doubt your own feelings, your own reality. You start to ask yourself, am I being selfish? Or am I really not doing enough? That's the trap. That's how they win. That's how they keep you bound to their emotional leash. But freedom begins the moment you realize that emotional manipulation is a form of control. And in this season of your life, you no longer have time to be controlled. You need space to heal, to breathe, to reflect, and to live. For decades, you've shown up for others, raising children, supporting your family, working hard, giving all that you had. Now it's time to reclaim the energy you have left. For you, not to be cold, not to be bitter, but to be free. I know this may sound harsh to some, especially in cultures where family is everything. But listen carefully. I'm not saying cut people off just because they're difficult. I'm saying protect yourself from those who use guilt like a chain. There's a difference, a big one. Manipulation is not love, even when it wears the face of someone familiar. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is disappoint expectations that were never healthy to begin with. And here's a truth that many are too afraid to say out loud. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they're good for your spirit. Let me say that again. Being related doesn't automatically mean they are healthy for your soul. At this stage of life, you are not responsible for fixing everyone. You are not required to hold the family together at the cost of your mental and emotional well-being. You're not here to be the referee, the therapist, or the emotional punching bag. You are here to live, fully, finally, freely. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries, especially not to those who never respected them in the first place. You don't need to justify your peace. You only need to claim it, because this peace, you earned it. Through storms, through heartbreak, through the years you stayed silent when you should have spoken, through the nights you gave when you had nothing left to give. You earned it with your life. Don't trade it for guilt. If someone truly loves you, they will care more about your peace than your compliance. We reminded ourselves of a powerful truth. Real love doesn't demand. It doesn't control, and it certainly doesn't weaponize guilt. True love respects you, lifts you up, and creates space for you to be fully yourself. It doesn't silence you through guilt or force you into submission with emotional debt. So, as you move forward in life, be mindful of those who seem gentle on the outside, who smile warmly and speak softly, but leave your spirit feeling heavier every time they walk away. Your soul always knows when it's being pulled into something toxic. And if you ever need a reminder that it's okay to say no, this is it. Every time you say no to someone who drains you, you are saying yes to your peace. That's a trade worth making, every single time. But guilt trippers are just one part of the story. Now, let's talk about another kind of person you must start backing away from. The constant complainers, the chronic critics. I like to call them energy vampires. You know who I'm talking about? These are the people who could win the lottery and still find something to complain about. The sun could be shining, and they'd grumble that it's too bright. You could be having a calm, quiet day, and they'll show up with a cloud over their head, determined to drag you under it with them. At this stage in life, your energy is sacred. You no longer have the endless reserves you once did. So you must be selective about where you spend that energy, and more importantly, who you spend it on. But energy vampires don't care. They'll talk endlessly about everything that's wrong in their lives, never once asking how you're doing, never checking in on your heart. And what's worse, they don't want solutions. They have no desire to heal or change. They just want company in their misery. And little by little, they drain you, not with drama, but with a slow, steady drip of negativity. It's constant, it's subtle, and it's exhausting. One phone call, one visit, one conversation, and suddenly your whole day feels heavier. You feel anxious, irritated, unsettled, and you don't even know why. That's how it works. They unload their emotional baggage onto you and walk away feeling lighter, while you're left carrying suitcases you never packed. Let me say this clearly. You were not put on this earth to be someone's emotional landfill. You were not created to absorb everyone's darkness at the cost of your own light. That is not your purpose, especially not now. I know some of these people might be close to you. They might even be people you've cared about for years. In the previous page, we spoke about how some of the most draining people in our lives might also be the ones closest to us. That truth isn't easy to face, because sometimes the ones we've known the longest are the ones who wear us down the most. Maybe it's someone you've known for decades, a sibling, a childhood friend, a trusted neighbor, or even your own child, and that makes it even harder to walk away. But please hear this clearly. Just because someone is part of your life story doesn't mean they get to write your ending. If they can't bring peace into your space, if all they offer is criticism, complaints, and emotional weight, then you have every right, and sometimes even the responsibility, to create distance. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because you now understand that your emotional well-being matters deeply. You no longer have the time or energy to keep pouring yourself out for people who only take. Have you ever noticed how being around certain people makes you feel smaller? How your mood changes after a conversation with them? How your hope begins to shrink? And suddenly, you start second-guessing things you felt confident about just moments earlier? That's the slow erosion of your peace, happening right before your eyes. That's the weight of constant negativity. And trust me, it builds over time. Some people have been stuck in their bitterness for so long, they don't even notice it anymore. Their identity is shaped by what's wrong, what's missing, and who's to blame. And if you're not careful, spending time with them will start to reshape you too. That's the real danger. They don't just drain you, they reshape your lens on life. They dull your spirit, color your thoughts with cynicism, and before you know it, you're carrying their burdens without even realizing it. But you deserve better. You deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you up, who challenge you with love, who speak life, not just loss. People who remind you that yes, the world can be messy, but it's still full of beauty. And if those people aren't in your circle, maybe it's time to tighten that circle. Let me tell you something most people won't. Peace is louder than noise. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. But when it's gone, you feel it in your body, your mind, and your soul. Protecting your peace means protecting your energy. And that means stepping back from anyone who treats your presence like a dumping ground for their chaos. We talked about protecting your peace by stepping away from those who treat your presence like a dumping ground for their chaos. Now, you need to embrace another truth. You are not responsible for carrying everything. You are not obligated to answer every phone call. You are not required to absorb every complaint. And you are not meant to carry burdens that others refuse to put down. Protecting your space is not selfish. Saying, "I love you, but I can't carry this with you today," isn't rude. It's wisdom. It's maturity. It's self-preservation. There comes a point in life where you must stop apologizing for choosing peace. You must stop explaining why you'd rather sit in silence than drown in someone else's noise. You must stop feeling guilty for not engaging in cycles of drama and complaints. Because the truth is, you've outgrown that noise. And that's something you should be proud of. You're entering a season of life where your focus should be on healing, reflecting, and cherishing the moments you have left, not wasting them tangled in someone else's misery or chaos. You've carried enough. You've sacrificed enough. And now, your energy must be guarded like a priceless treasure. So when the chronic complainers come knocking, when the critics try to drag you back into their whirlpool of negativity, remember this: you were never meant to be the person who constantly carries the weight of other people's storms. You're here to protect the light within you. Now, let me take you somewhere a bit more personal. This next part stings a little deeper, because it's not about strangers. It's about the people who only come around when they want something. The users. The ones who treat your relationship like a convenience store, dropping in when they're running low, grabbing what they need, and vanishing the moment they're full again. No, thank you. No, how are you? And let me be clear. This isn't about refusing to help. It's about recognizing when help has become a one-way street, when love has turned into a transaction, when your presence only matters as long as you're useful. You've seen it. Maybe it's someone who only calls when their car breaks down or rent is due. Maybe they pop back into your life just long enough to borrow money, time, or peace, and then fade away again without a single word of appreciation. And still, you give them the benefit of the doubt, because that's who you are. You have a heart that wants to believe in the best. You remember who they used to be. You hold on to the hope that maybe that version of them still exists somewhere. You began to face a difficult truth. Not everyone truly values what you give. And now, an even deeper truth comes to light. Sometimes the people you wait for the most only show up when they need something. You hope that one day they'll come just to be with you. Not to borrow, not to take, but simply to be present, because they care. But life, if you're paying attention, will teach you this lesson. Some people will never show up unless there's something in it for them. And that kind of relationship, no matter how long it's lasted or how many memories you've shared, is not love. It's dependency. It's convenience. It's a quiet transaction that will leave you emotionally drained if you don't learn how to say no. One of the hardest lessons in growing older is realizing this: being needed is not the same as being loved. Let me say it again. Being needed is not being loved. Some people keep you around simply because you're easy, because you rarely say no, because they know you have a big heart and a soft guard. And each time they return, they take a little more from you, not just money or time. No, they take something even more precious: your presence, your peace, your patience, and they leave you emptier than they found you. And don't they always have a story to tell, an excuse, a reason, a hopeful promise that this time will be different? And for a brief moment, you want to believe them. You want to believe they've changed, that this time, maybe, just maybe, they came because they care, not because they're in need. But then, it happens again. You give, they take. Their problem is solved, and they vanish. The dangerous part? This kind of relationship doesn't wear you down all at once. It's a slow erosion, a quiet drain. You begin to feel guilty for not always being available. You second-guess yourself every time you set a boundary. You start wondering, am I being too harsh? But deep down, you know the truth. You're being used. And yes, it hurts. There's a particular silence that follows once someone gets what they wanted from you. A silence that whispers, they weren't here for you. They were here for what you could give. And if you're brave enough to listen, that silence will teach you something powerful. You deserve more than being someone's backup plan. You deserve more than being someone's emotional ATM. You deserve to be surrounded by people who give back, who lift you up, not just drain you. If someone only shows up when they need something and disappears when you have nothing left to give. That was never love. But now, it's time to face a more subtle kind of presence in your life: the controllers. These aren't people who come to love you. They come to control you. And I want you to hear this clearly. You do not need to be managed. You need to be respected. One of the most silent forms of emotional suffocation is when someone repeatedly questions your choices, undermines your instincts, or tries to run your life while hiding behind phrases like, "I'm just trying to help." But what they're really doing is stealing something sacred: your dignity, your voice, your freedom. And at this stage in life, you have absolutely earned all three. Controllers come in many forms. Some are obvious. They're loud, pushy, always, telling you what to think, feel, or do. But others are much quieter. They don't shout. They don't bark orders. They make the decisions for you, not because they think you're weak, but because they fear your independence. Because when you're independent, they lose control. So they offer unsolicited advice, press opinions you didn't ask for, and apply just enough pressure to make you question the truth you already knew deep in your gut. You've seen this before. You mention wanting to travel. They respond, "That's not safe at your age." You say you're thinking of downsizing your home. They say, "You're not thinking straight." You try to give something away, and suddenly they whisper, "Don't. What if you need it later?" It's a constant low hum of doubt disguised as concern. But it's not care. It's control. And that kind of control can make you feel like a child in your own life. Let me tell you something true. Age does not erase your ability to make choices. If anything, it refines it. You've lived through war, through heartbreak, through healing, through economic crashes and beautiful ordinary days. You've earned the right to say, "I know what I want, and I trust myself to choose it." Anyone who tries to silence that voice isn't supporting you. They're handling you, and you are not someone who needs to be handled. What makes this harder is that sometimes the controller is someone who genuinely loves you, a child who thinks they're protecting you, a spouse who fears change, a friend who believes they know you better than you know yourself. But here's the question: when does love cross the line and become control? We uncovered a painful truth. Sometimes the people who love us the most can unknowingly become the ones who limit us through control disguised as care. And because their voice is familiar, their presence trusted, you begin to listen. You begin to doubt yourself. Little by little, your world begins to shrink. Not because you wanted less from life, but because someone else decided you weren't capable of more. But let me tell you what I believe. With every fiber of my being, it is not your job to live a life that keeps others comfortable. Your only job is to live a life that feels true and whole within your own soul. And if that means disappointing the ones who think they know what's best for you, so be it. Your truth is not a topic for debate. Your freedom is not something you must keep earning. You already paid for it, with years of sacrifice, struggle, experience, and quiet wisdom. And please, don't let anyone confuse your need for support with a need for supervision. Yes, we all need help from time to time. That's part of being human. But needing help does not mean handing over the keys to your entire life. It means inviting someone in as a partner, not appointing them as your warden. Controllers often act offended when you begin to push back. They'll say things like, "I'm just looking out for you." But there's a very big difference between looking out for someone and trying to control them. One is driven by love, the other by fear. And you, my friend, have lived too much, life to let someone else's fear dictate your next steps. You deserve to be surrounded by people who trust your voice, who celebrate your choices, who believe in your ability to lead your own life. Because, let's be honest, if they haven't trusted you by now, what more do you have to prove? You don't need anyone to co-sign your life decisions. What you need are people willing to walk beside you, not people trying to walk over you. And yes, I know, for some of you, this will mean having hard conversations. It means saying things like, "I love you, but I'm going to make this decision on my own." It means letting go of the need to be constantly understood and choosing instead to be respected. That kind of choice takes courage, but it's also the kind of courage that sets you free. So if someone in your life is trying to put you in a box, if they're parenting you when what you need is partnership, if they're making you feel like your dreams are foolish or your choices are naive, then stand tall. Because this life, it's still yours to live. You reclaimed your voice and remembered this life still belongs to you. But once you've drawn those boundaries and stood your ground, there's one more kind of person you need to be mindful of, especially in this season of life: the ones who refuse to grow. These are the people stuck in the past, living on repeat, caught in loops of bitterness, blame, and immaturity, no matter how many birthdays they've had. You know the type. They wear their age on their face, but not in their spirit. They've learned how to survive, but not how to evolve. And when you're around them, it's like being dragged backward. Their world feels small. Their thoughts are fixed. Their hearts closed. And if you're not careful, they'll pull you into that same space, stale, stagnant, and suffocating. These are the folks who gossip about everyone but never reflect on themselves, who love to analyze what everyone else is doing wrong, but never stop to ask, what in me still needs to grow? They pretend to have all the answers, but deep down, they're just afraid of change. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Growth doesn't stop when your hair turns gray. In fact, the older you get, the more essential spiritual growth becomes. Because in this stage of life, you're not just reminiscing about the past. You're preparing for something deeper: peace, clarity, and legacy. You're preparing to live lighter, to let go, to finish well. But here's the truth. You can't walk into that kind of freedom if you're surrounded by people who refuse to evolve. People who still argue over the petty. People still stewing over things that happened 20 years ago. People who wear their grudges like medals, when really, they're just anchors. If you let them, they'll pull you into conversations that drain your soul, into arguments that lead nowhere, into belief systems that keep you emotionally stuck. But hear this. It's not your job to carry them forward if they've decided to stand still. Yes, it sounds harsh, but it's truth. Your soul was never meant to be trapped inside someone else's emotional immaturity. Just because you share a history with someone doesn't mean you owe them your future. There will be people who look at you and say, "You've changed." And you know what? That's a compliment. Because if you're not changing, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're slowly withering on the inside. So how do you keep growing, even when the people around you don't? Previously, we uncovered a hard truth. Not everyone around you is willing to grow, and staying close to people who refuse to evolve can slowly drain your spirit. But here's what makes it even more difficult. Your growth unsettles them. Your healing reveals the work they've avoided. Your peace disturbs their chaos. Your transformation shines a light on the shadows they've ignored for years. And that's why people who are stuck don't want to see you evolve. It's not about you doing something wrong. It's about them feeling uncomfortable in the presence of your progress. Sometimes the hardest people to walk away from are the ones who've been in your life the longest. Not because they're good for you, but because they've become familiar. They've become part of your routine. But familiarity is not a good enough reason to stay stuck. You can still love someone from a distance. You can honor the history you share without carrying the weight of it. I've seen it many times. Elders who are rich in age but stagnant in spirit, full of stories, but lacking in insight. They can tell you what happened, but not what it meant. They can list their regrets, but not what they've learned. That's not wisdom. That's just memory. And memory without meaning traps you in repetition. And I know you didn't come this far just to walk in circles. You came this far to find peace, to find clarity, to pass down more than just tales. You came to pass down truth, but you cannot do that while dragging the weight of those who refuse to reflect, who refuse to heal, who refuse to let go. Their chaos becomes your burden. Their unresolved pain becomes your prison. And before long, you find yourself watering dead plants, hoping they'll bloom again, even when you know, deep down, they won't. So let me say something that may be difficult, but necessary. Some people don't want to grow. They don't want to get better. They only want to be right. And you could spend the best years of your final chapter trying to convince them of something their heart is not ready to receive. But that's not your assignment. Your job is not to carry full-grown adults through emotional growth they refuse to pursue. Your job is to walk in peace, to keep evolving, to surround yourself with people who are on the same path, people who are curious, not just opinionated, people who are open, not just loud, people who seek healing, not just rehearse old wounds. And when you do, you'll feel something shift. You'll feel lighter, clearer, more alive. Because growth creates space. But being around people who resist growth, that will suffocate your soul. You deserve relationships that feel like fresh air, not like heavy fog. You deserve people who challenge you in love, not trap you in fear. And if that means shrinking your circle to protect your peace, so be it. So what does it look like to rebuild your inner world with peace at the center? Previously, we talked about the power of walking with those who grow with you, and the freedom that comes with letting go of those who don't. Because in the end, a small circle full of truth and growth is far better than a large one filled with noise and numbness. So when you find yourself surrounded by people who haven't grown an inch, in spirit or in heart, people still clinging to bitterness, still blaming the world, still recycling the same tired conversations from 20 years ago, pause and remember this. There's one more kind of person you must learn to gently but firmly distance yourself from, especially in this sacred season of life. Those who mock faith, the ones who roll their eyes when you talk about God, the ones who belittle the very thing that's carried you through storm after storm, the ones who treat your convictions like fairy tales, dismissing them with sarcasm or cold smiles. Now, to be clear, this isn't about people who simply believe differently. This is about people who actively disrespect your belief. People who take joy in tearing down the very foundation your soul has stood on. People who mock what they don't understand. Let's get one thing straight. Faith is not weakness. It's strength. It's why you're still here. It's what held you together when the pain could have pulled you apart. Faith is what wrapped itself around you when no one else did. It's what whispered, keep going in the middle of the darkest night. It's the reason you stood up when life tried to keep you down. So anyone who laughs at that, anyone who treats your faith like foolishness, is not someone you need in your space. Not now. Not ever. Because when you reach this chapter of life, the questions go deeper. The reflections get heavier. You start thinking about eternity, about purpose, about legacy. You're no longer counting years, you're measuring meaning. And in that kind of sacred space, you need people who speak life, not mockery. People who may not walk the same spiritual path, but at the very least, respect it. But some people, they are so rooted in cynicism, they've forgotten how to wonder. They'll make you feel silly for praying. They'll make you feel small for believing in something greater. They'll laugh at the very thing that's been your anchor. And if you allow them too close, their doubt will start to seep into your spirit. Not because they're right, but because their voices are loud and constant. Don't let it happen. Don't let their sarcasm shrink your faith. Don't let their jokes plant seeds of shame in your soul. Because here's the truth. Faith is not fragile. It's fire. It's what's kept you breathing. It's what's held your family together. It's what made you unbreakable when you could have fallen apart. And in a world that often misunderstands quiet strength, how do you keep that faith burning bright? We reminded ourselves, faith is not weakness. It's fire. It's the anchor that held you when everything else fell apart. And here's the deeper truth. It's also what's healed you, over and over again. Faith doesn't make you naive. It makes you steady. It makes you rooted, wise, and full of quiet strength. And anyone who can't see that, they're not looking with the right eyes. The painful part is, some of these people might be close to you. A friend you've known for decades. A family member who's grown distant or dismissive. Maybe even one of your own children who now thinks they're too smart to believe in what they call old stories. And yes, you love them. You always will. But hear this clearly. Just because you love someone doesn't mean you have to let them belittle what matters most to you. This isn't about arguing. It's not about trying to convert anyone or prove anything. This is about guarding the soil of your soul. Because whatever peace you have in your spirit right now, you fought. For that, you bled for it. You cried for it. You wrestled your way through nights of silence, heartbreak, and doubt. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for what you believe, who you pray to, or where your hope comes from when everything goes dark. Because you know what's real. You've lived it. You've felt the hand of God holding you when no one else could. You've heard His whisper in the quiet. You've seen His grace show up when you least deserved it. And I don't care how educated, how successful, or how enlightened someone claims to be. If they haven't walked through your valley, they don't get to laugh at your light. Sometimes, for the health of your soul, you have to love people from a distance. You can still pray for them. You can still wish them well, but you don't have to let them poison your peace or chip away at your faith with constant doubt. That's not love. That's spiritual warfare, dressed up as casual conversation. And it's not just about the words they speak. It's about the energy they bring, the eye rolls, the subtle smirks, the passive-aggressive comments that quietly erode your joy. Little by little, until you forget what peace even feels like. You deserve better than that. You deserve people who honor your walk, even if they don't share it. People who sit beside your truth, not poke holes in it for sport. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to leave this world. Every one of us. And when that time comes, what will matter won't be the arguments we won, but the peace we carried, the love we gave, and the truth we stood on, even when it wasn't popular. So how do you protect that truth in a noisy, doubting world and still keep your heart soft? True peace comes not from perfect circumstances, but from a soul that is anchored in faith, in truth, in the kind of quiet strength no one else can take away. And that's what I want for you. Not a life without storms, but a spirit that remains steady through them. I want you to lie down at night and feel peace, not because everything went right, but because you stayed rooted in what matters, because you didn't let mockery rob you of reverence, because you held on to your faith even when others laughed, doubted, or dismissed it. So when those who mock what you believe come around, whether through sarcasm, silence, or subtle jabs, remember this: you don't need their agreement to walk closely with God. You don't need applause to keep your soul aligned. All you need is the courage to protect your faith like the treasure it truly is. Because faith isn't something to be explained to everyone. It's something to be lived with conviction, quietly, boldly, and without apology. Now, let's return to a truth we faced before, one that's painful but liberating. You deserve relationships that give back, not just take. But to make space for that kind of love, you'll sometimes have to do something incredibly hard. Let go of the people who only show up when they need something. Not because they care, because real love doesn't appear only when it's convenient. It shows up when things are hard. It shows up with presence, with truth, and with consistency. And yes, I know, letting go of someone you've invested in, cried over, prayed for, shared years with, it's not easy. How do you say no to someone who meant so much? But eventually, you have to pause and ask yourself, what is this relationship costing me? Not just money, but emotionally, spiritually. Do you feel seen or just useful? Do you feel safe or constantly drained? And don't be surprised when those same people call you selfish the moment you stop catering to their needs. That's part of the cycle. Because as long as they can guilt you, they can keep using you. But the moment you stop performing, the moment you choose peace over obligation, that's when their true nature will show. And when it happens, let it. Let them be angry. Let them walk away. Let them twist the story if they must. But you stay rooted, because deep down, you already know. You were not made to be used. You were made to be loved. In this season of life, you don't need people who count favors. You don't need people who only remember your number when they're in crisis. You need people who think of you in joy, in quiet, in ordinary, peaceful days. People who come not for what you do, but for who you are. You've spent decades giving of your time, your heart, your strength. Now, it's time to receive. Not just respect, but genuine mutual care. And that starts with a choice. To no longer be anyone's emotional vending machine. So when they come to you, open hand, empty heart. When they come not to hold you, but to take from you, remember this: if their love disappears the moment your resources run dry, it was never love to begin with. And finally, remember this: the later chapters of life are not meant for carrying the weight of people who refuse to grow, refuse to heal, or who mock the spiritual truth that has carried you this far. This is your time to return to yourself, to return to peace, to faith, and to relationships that truly honor the heart that's been broken many times, but never gave up. You don't need a large circle. You only need a small one, filled with sincerity, kindness, and people who respect the light within you. And if that means walking alone for a little while, so be it. Because you are never truly alone when you walk in truth. If these words have spoken to your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and continue this journey with us. Because the next videos will bring even more healing, more wisdom, and more light for your soul. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the goodness that's still ahead. We'll see you in the next video. May you continue to walk in peace and in light.